The night was still, save for the chirping of crickets and the hum of the old ceiling fan that creaked above Mama Felicia's head. The small bulb on her veranda cast a warm glow on the framed photograph she held close, her late husband, Chief Okon, smiling in his favorite Agbada. 20 years gone, and yet his presence filled the house as if he'd just stepped out for a walk. The house in Suryalir was old but proud, a 2-story reminder of sweat, sacrifice, and love. Every brick told a story of how far they'd come. Once, it echoed with children's laughter, the smell of AUZ soup, and Chief Okon's booming laughter. Now, only the radio spoke. At 68, Mama Felicia's bones ached when it rained, but her mind was sharp. She woke before dawn, swept her compound, watered her hibiscus plants, and talked to her late husband's portrait as though he could still hear her. That night, as she flipped through an old family album, her eyes lingered on photos of her children. Ibube, the eldest, tall and always ambitious even as a boy; Chica, her only daughter, beautiful but proud; and Nonso, the youngest, gentle-hearted but easily swayed. They had once been her pride. But lately, their calls came with one repeated sentence. "Mama, that old house need to go." They wanted to sell it. "We'll get you a smaller place," Ibube had said during his last visit. "You don't need this big compound." She had smiled politely but said nothing. She knew greed when it spoke, even in a child's voice. That evening, the gate creaked open. A neighbor, Auntie Grace, stopped by with fresh mangoes. "Mama Felicia, I saw your son's car last week. Is he around again?" Felicia sighed. "He came to measure the house with an estate agent." Grace gasped. "Your children want to sell this place." Felicia's eyes darkened. "They think I don't know. But this house is my husband's legacy, the one thing we built together. I will not watch them trade it for pride." Later that night, she went into Chief Okon's study. Dust covered everything except the desk. She still cleaned it every Sunday. In the bottom drawer was a brown envelope sealed with red wax. She pulled it out gently, the original property title. Her wrinkled fingers traced her husband's signature. "They will come for me, Okon," she whispered, "but I will be ready." As the candle burned low, Mama Felicia sat alone in the quiet, her silhouette framed against the window, a small woman with a heart bigger than any mansion her children could buy. And though her face softened with age, her spirit was iron. That night, she prayed, "God, give me the strength not to hate my own blood." Outside, the wind carried a prayer through the mango trees, whispering it into the darkness, the beginning of a storm. 3 days later, the house gate rattled again. Ibube's black Prado SUV pulled up, music blaring from inside. He stepped out in an expensive suit, sunglasses perched on his head even though it was almost sunset. Behind him, 2 estate agents followed with clipboards. "Mama," he called out cheerfully, "we came to help you restructure." Felicia stood at the doorway, her wrapper neatly tied, her face calm but cold. "Restructure what, Ibube?" "The property," he replied. "We can sell this house and get you a better place in Lekki. Imagine, a smaller flat, a nice, constant light." "I have constant light from heaven," she cut in. The agent shifted uncomfortably. "Madam, this compound can fetch over 180 million naira. It's prime land." Felicia raised her hand. "My husband built this with his hands. It's not for sale." Before he could respond, a phone rang. Ibube picked it up, Chica on video call. "Mama, please listen to reason." Her voice came, crisp and confident. She sat in her posh living room, nails long and painted gold. "That place is too big for you. Let's handle the paperwork and give you comfort." Felicia's chest tightened. "Comfort is not walls, my daughter. Comfort is peace." Chica sighed loudly. "Mama, you're being emotional. This is business." Ibube's tone hardened. "We'll take care of everything, even if you don't want to be involved." For a moment, silence filled the air. Then Felicia stepped forward. "If you sell this house while I live, my spirit will haunt whoever touches it." Ibube laughed nervously. "Mama, please don't dramatize." She turned her back. "I'm tired. Lock the gate when you leave." That night, as rain poured, Felicia sat in her late husband's chair, tears mixing with thunder. "Ocone," she whispered, "your children have turned your name into business." But even in the storm, her eyes burned with resolve. She would not go down quietly. A week later, all three children arrived together. It was the first time in years they'd been in the same room. Chica came first, wearing perfume strong enough to fill the corridor. Nonso followed, nervous and quiet. Ibube entered last, face tight, holding a folder. Felicia had prepared food, jollof rice, fried fish, and bitter leaf soup. They ate in silence until Ibube pushed his plate aside. "Mama, we didn't come to eat. We came to talk business." She looked up slowly. "You forget I am not a businesswoman. I am your mother." Chica leaned forward. "That's exactly why we're worried. You're old. Anything can happen. We need to secure things now before you." "Before I die," she finished for her. The room froze. "Mama, don't take it that way," Chica said softly. "We're just thinking ahead." Felicia stood. "When your father died, none of you thought ahead. I carried this family. Now you want to bury me before my time because of a roof." Nonso spoke quietly. "We only want what's fair." Her voice trembled. "Fair? I gave you my back for school fees, my food for your bellies, my prayers for your peace. And now fairness is taking my home." The silence was unbearable. Finally, Ibube muttered, "If you won't agree, we'll take it legally." Felicia's lips curved slightly, half sadness, half defiance. Then prepare for war. That night, she sat with her old friend, Barrister Dyke, her husband's former lawyer. He was shocked by her story. "They can't win. Mama, you're still of sound mind." Felicia smiled faintly. "They don't know I still have their father's original deed." He nodded. "We'll fight." As he left, she looked up at the framed photo of Chief Ocone again. "You said our children would be our legacy," she whispered. "But legacies can rot if not guarded." 2 weeks later, a knock echoed at the gate. A uniformed court messenger stood outside, holding a white envelope. "Madam, I've been instructed to deliver this," he said softly. Felicia took it, hands trembling. The Lagos State High Court logo glared back at her. Inside, a lawsuit, filed by her 3 children, claiming she was mentally unfit to manage the property. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. The paper fluttered from her hand. Neighbors soon whispered. At church, murmurs followed her pew. "Isn't that Mama Felicia whose children dragged her to court?" But she refused to hide. The next morning, she put on her best lace gown and walked to Dyke's office. Her head was high. Dyke frowned as he read the document. "They are serious. They want full control of the property." Felicia's voice was calm. "Then we go to court." He hesitated. "This will get messy. I gave birth to them in pain. I can face them in court in strength." Days turned into weeks. Reporters started sniffing around. The story of a mother dragged to court by her children began to circulate online. At night, she sat by her window, praying, "God, if this is my test, give me patience to pass it." But behind her calm, a storm brewed, not of revenge, but of resilience. The morning of the first hearing dawned gray. Mama Felicia dressed carefully, blue lace, head tie neatly folded. Dyke met her outside the courthouse. "Are you ready?" "I've been ready since the day I birthed them," she said. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with whispers. Her children sat on one side, well-dressed, avoiding her eyes. The judge entered, his robe flowing. "Court is in session." The children's lawyer began. "Your lordship, the defendant is of advanced age, suffering cognitive decline, and unable to maintain the property." Felicia stared straight ahead, expressionless. Then came their evidence, fake medical letters, forged reports. She listened silently, gripping her purse. When her turn came, Dyke guided her to the stand. "Mama Felicia," the judge said kindly, "do you understand why you are here?" She nodded. "Yes, my lord. I am here because the womb I carried turned against me." A soft gasp rippled through the courtroom. "I am not confused," she continued. "I raised these 3 alone after their father died. I paid their school fees selling vegetables, teaching children how to read. I kept this house alive. If that is confusion, then let me remain mad. The judge's eyes softened. As she left the stand, cameras clicked. Outside, a journalist asked, "Mama, what do you want to say to your children?" She smiled sadly. Family doesn't destroy itself over walls and roofs. But greed blinds even the eyes that once saw love. By evening, her quote was everywhere. Lagos couldn't stop talking about her courage, and her children couldn't stop feeling the world's eyes watching them. The battle had just begun, but Mama Felicia was no longer just a widow. She had become a symbol. By dawn, Lagos had chosen a side. Radio OAPs debated it between Afrobeat sets. Market women taped printed headlines to their stalls. Drivers argued at bus stops with palms slicing the air. How children go drag their mama go court because of house. Abomination. The story traveled from phone blogs to TV talk shows, gaining heat like pepper left in the sun. Mama Felicia woke to the sound of a neighbor's broom sweeping her front step. It was Sade, the tailor who worked under the mango tree. "Mama, allow me," she said softly. Behind her came Ijoma from the kiosk, hands full of bread and milk. "We day your back." They didn't linger. They just left warmth behind, the simple kind that keeps a soul from shivering. At 9 a.m., Barrister Dyke called. "Mama, avoid statements today. Let the courtroom do the talking." "I have nothing to add," she replied. "Truth is loud enough." Across town, Ibube sat in an office that used to feel like a throne. Now it was a glass cage. He watched the client's email blink onto his laptop. "In light of recent PR concerns, we'll be pausing our engagement." Another followed, and another. His manager shifted uneasily. "So, people think dragging your mother to court over property is bad optics." "Optics," he hissed, but the word lodged in his throat like a bone. Chika did not leave her apartment. Her husband, Femi, paced the living room. Phone presses a whisper into some colleague about board perception, donor sensitivity, brand risk. When he hung up, he didn't look at her. "You need to fix this." "I tried," she snapped. "Mama refuses to be reasonable." "She's your mother," he said, quiet but cold, and the sentence turned the room into Harmattan. Nonso took the hit differently. He stayed in his one-room apartment, shades drawn, staring at comments on a blog post. "God punish you." "Repent." "Thunder fire wicked Pekin." He shut the phone off and sat in the dark. A memory pushed through. The day Mama had sold jewelry to pay his last school fees. He had cried then from gratitude. Today he cried from shame. By afternoon, #I Mother Sorilia was trending. A TikTok clip of Mama's court speech, overlaid with soft strings and captions, racked up 1 million views. One comment read, "May God give me a dignity at 68. Another, "If my mother asks for my breath, I'll give it." Dyke arrived at the house near evening. He found Mama in the courtyard, mopping though someone else had already cleaned. "You shouldn't read the comments," he said gently. "I haven't," she replied, "but I hear the street. It's enough." He opened a folder, face brightening. "We filed a motion to strike their medical report. It's a forgery. I also have an affidavit ready from the church's health clinic attesting to your clear mind. And," he paused, savoring it, "we might have a witness." "Witness?" Mama's brows lifted. An old colleague of Chief Ocon reached out, claims to have handled some papers. His elderly, slow, but firm. If his memory aligns, we'll have the spine of this case strengthened. Mama exhaled, the day's ache easing from her shoulders. "Let God pick the stones for my sling." Night fell. In Ibube's compound, a stone skittered across the gate. No damage, just a warning. He peered through the curtains. Heart thudding. Pride whispered, "Hold the line." Thea answered, "You're already falling." Chika scrolled through her phone, searching for a narrative. She called Auntie Mabel, the cousin with a slippery kindness. "I need inside gist," Chika said. "What is Mama planning?" Mabel chuckled, a sound like coins. "Talk to me right." By the time the city slept, the battlefronts were drawn. Public sympathy encircling Mama like a chorus, private desperation tightening around her children's throats. In the quiet of her bedroom, Mama knelt by the bed, hands clasped. Father, don't let victory steal humility from me, and don't let shame keep my children in darkness. The fan ticked overhead like a patient clock. Lagos exhaled. Tomorrow would sharpen the knives. Morning light spilled through lace curtains as Auntie Mabel glided into the compound with cassava fufu and aguzi in a cooler, all smiles and fragrance. She was the cousin who arrived at births and funerals with stories no one asked for, the relative people embraced and counted their rings after. My sister, she sang, hugging Mama. I couldn't sleep, thinking of you. In the kitchen, Mabel ladled soup with practiced affection. Court Royale is not for hearts like ours, she murmured. Let me carry some stress. Mama smiled, grateful for hands, any hands, not clenched into fist of accusation. They ate in the parlor, laughter visiting the room briefly like a shy neighbor. Mabel scared at the headlines. Children of nowadays. No fear of God. Mama's eyes softened, the relief of being believed smoothing her brow. After lunch, Mabel asked casual questions that weren't casual. This lawyer, is he sharp? Any new evidence? Maybe a letter from Chief. Mama hesitated. She thought of Barrister Dyke's warning about loose ears. But Mabel's face was bright with concern, and loneliness is a way of cracking caution. We have enough, Mama said gently. God will add the rest. Mabel left at 3. By 4, a blog titled City Snoop published a Source Insider leaked. Mother's legal strategy leans on old deeds, church testimony. No financial backing. The language was too neat to be guessed. It had been fed. At 5, Dyke arrived, jaw clenched. He set his phone down, the blog open. Who visited today? Mabel. Mama answered, voice small. She sold you, he said, not unkindly. I'm sorry. Shame warmed Mama's cheeks. I wanted to feel seen. You are seen, Dyke replied, by the right eyes. Keep the circle tight. Me, the clinic matron, 2 neighbors I vetted. Everyone else can watch from the gate. The betrayal cut deeper because it came scented with perfume. Mama stood, hands trembling, and made tea she didn't drink. In the stirring, she remembered Chief Ocon's words from long ago. If rain falls, you don't remove the roof, you patch it from inside. She went to the study and opened the bottom drawer. Out came the brown envelope with the original deed. Under it lay another envelope, fresh, white, waiting. She had bought it after the first court date. At the desk, she wrote a new will in careful, looping script. The first page read, On this day, I affirm that the Suilia house is not for sale under any condition while I live, and upon my death it shall pass not to greedy hands but to purpose. She paused, heart pounding, then continued, The purpose is shelter. She folded the pages and sealed the envelope with red wax, pressing her wedding ring into it. It was not yet a legal document. Dyke would have to notarize, file, and fortify it. But on paper, a future had taken breath. Across the city, Chica sat with Auntie Mabel at a cafe. You've done well, Chica said, sliding an envelope across the table. Mabel tucked it away with the same smoothness she used to tuck in compassion. You'll win. Mabel cooed. The old never survived long wars. Chica gave a tired smile that didn't reach her eyes. Something in her chest ached, a small pain with a quiet voice. What if this is a line that can't be uncrossed? She swallowed it down. None so cold that night, voice hoarse. Sister, I think we're wrong. We're practical, she snapped. Mama is unstable. She's the most stable person I know. The line went dead. He put his phone face down and stared at the ceiling as if it held mercy. At bedtime, Mama stood at her window and watched moonlight lay its thin blessing across the compound. She felt the sting of betrayal and the steadiness of resolve rise together like tide. Ocon, she whispered, they are borrowing shame, but it fits them. Help me return it without hating them. The night answered with a breeze that smelled of rain, and in the quiet she decided, if they wanted war, she would not meet them with swords. She would meet them with a blueprint. The courthouse hummed like a hive, reporters with microphones, Clocks in hurried flocks. The public press on tiptoe to witness a family's private fire carried to the altar of law. Mama walked beside Dyke, her blue lace crisp, Jill stacked in crown. She moved neither fast nor slow, but in the unhurried rhythm of someone who knows time is not the judge. Inside, Ibube straightened his tie until it hurt. Chica dabbed powder over sleepless eyes. Nonso kept his stare on the floor, hands wide together. The children's new lawyer, a flashy young man with English sharper than a tailor's needle, rose. "My lord, our client seeks guardianship not out of greed but concern. The defendant fixation on a decrepit structure demonstrates poor judgment." Dyke stood smoothly. "We object to character assassination and to the use of forged evidence, which we will address now." He approached the bench with a folder, each step deliberate. Exhibit A, the original deed of title, registered in 1989, bearing the signatures of Chief Ocone and Mrs. Felicia Ocone as joint owners, with survivorship clause. Procured from the family's archive, authenticated by the Lagos Land Registry yesterday. He handed copies to the clerk and opposing counsel. The courtroom inhaled as one. The judge adjusted his glasses, scanning the seal, the registry stamp, the faint watermark that old paper wears like dignity. He nodded to the bailiff, who darted out. Minutes later, a registry officer arrived to confirm. "It's genuine, my lord." Dyke's voice turned softer. Exhibit B, an affidavit from the church clinic's matron and attending physician attesting to Mrs. Ocone's cognitive fitness, observed over years. And Exhibit C, the police report noting an attempt to submit a falsified medical note in this case. The young lawyer shuffled papers and found only air. The judge's gaze cooled. "Counsel for the applicants, do you dispute the registry's confirmation?" "We request time to review, my lord." "Denied. You filed to strip a living, lucid mother of her home. We will not indulge delay dressed as diligence." Dyke wasn't done. "Finally, my lord, we call Mr. Adams, retired banker, former state account officer to the late Chief Ocone." An elderly man with a careful gait approached the stand, hat cradled against his chest. He smelled faintly of palm wine and mothballs. His voice was a warm, worn cloth. "Chief told me, years before he died, that this house should never be sold. He loved it like a first son. Do you have any letters?" Dyke asked. "I have an envelope he gave me for safekeeping, to be opened if the house was threatened." He lifted a sealed packet. The courtroom leaned forward as if pulled. The judge examined the seal, the date, the signature sketched with Chief's familiar flourish. "We'll admit this pending verification," he said, but even the pending sat like a verdict in the room. Opposing counsel tried to recover, painting the children as dutiful, the house as decaying, safety as a motive. Dyke closed like a door. Duty doesn't forge documents. Love doesn't file lies. When the judge adjourned for the day, he left the sentence hanging like a bell. The court is not a market where affection is sold for title. Consider carefully how you wish to be remembered in the record. Cameras flashed. Someone in the gallery whispered, "God will not sleep." Outside, a reporter thrust a microphone toward Mama. She smiled politely. "My children are my heart, but a heart can't be divided and still beat." The quote would become a caption, then a chorus. Monday broke with church bells and bus horns. The neighborhood woke to activity arranged like a choir. Sade stitching uniforms under the mango tree. Ijoma haggling over crates of Maltina. Children dragging backpacks along the dust. In that ordinary music, greatness often hides. It had now gathered at Mama's gate. By mid-morning, a small crowd formed. Church women in Gil, youth from a local football team, men from the vigilante group, even the new pharmacists who hardly spoke Yoruba yet. They brought paint buckets, brushes, cement, sand. "Mama," Brother Cunnell said, clearing his throat, "allow us to patch the fence and paint the gate. Free." He didn't add because we want to be the kind of people who defend mothers. He didn't need to. Mama protested weakly. "You have shops, children, lives." "We have hearts," Sade replied, tying an apron, "and they are not for decoration." So the gate turned from tired green to hopeful blue under the sun. The fence lost its cracks. The gutter found its gradient. Nonso arrived with nails, jaw tight, eyes lowered. He took instructions from Brother Cunnell and climbed a ladder to rehang the loosened light above the front door. They work with a companionable silence of people who have chosen to fix what's in front of them instead of what's inside them, though sometimes, kindly, it becomes the same thing. Midday brought a knock. 3 young lawyers in matching shirts stood at the gate, where, from Her Voice Initiative, the lead introduced Eyes Bright. We offer pro bono media protection and counseling for elderly women in property disputes. We'd like to support you. Press statements, interviews, social media guidance. Mama looked to Dyke, who had just arrived with files. He nodded cautiously. We can coordinate. She won't be paraded. The lead lawyer smiled. We don't parade queens. We crown them. Word of the day's work spread. By afternoon, a broadcaster from a popular radio station called, requesting a live interview. Her Voice Initiative drafted talking points. Keep it dignified. No insults. Emphasize values. Legacy, shelter, community. Focus on why the house matters beyond inheritance. The media coach advised. Tell a story bigger than one family. The interview aired at 5 p.m. Mama sat on a plastic chair in the courtyard, phone on speaker. Hallelujah chorus from a distant church mixing with a host baritone. Mama Felicia, he greeted, Lagos is listening. I greet the city, she replied, voice steady. Why fight this hard for a building? She considered, because it's not just a building. It's where dignity slept and woke up every day when we had nothing. My husband and I built this place with hands and prayers. I wanted to keep doing what it has always done, hold people. Hold who? Mama. Anyone the world drops. The station's lines jammed with callers, an elderly man blessing her, a young woman crying, a taxi driver offering free rides to her court dates. Hashtag spiraled again. Hash I am Mother of Surilir. Hash House of Dignity. Hash hold who the world drops. The surge of love did not heal everything. At dusk, Chica watched the interview from her sofa, mascara one motionless in her hand. Femi stood by the window, back turned, when the call in from a little girl saying, I wish you were my grandma, played. He glanced over, eyes wet. Apologize to your mother, he said softly. The word apologize felt to Chica like a narrow bridge over a wide river. Pride doesn't like narrow bridges. Ibube stared at his laptop. Emails dried to husks. Reputation, once a currency, had crashed like a bad stock. He reached for his phone, thumb hovering over Mama's name. He set it down. Pride is a pole coach. It teaches you to sit when you should kneel, to speak when you should listen. Back in Surilir, floodlight snapped on, illuminating the newly painted gate. The youth team presented a small hand-painted sign, the Ocone house crown with a simple heart. Mama traced the letters with a fingertip. Thank you, she whispered. This is how a city should feel. As night folded the street into softer shapes, Nonso fixed the final bulb above the door. He climbed down the ladder, palms gritty, face streaked with sweat and humility. Mama, he began, words having to fight through shame. I want to help, properly, every day, if you'll let me. She studied his face the way you study clouds for rain. Come tomorrow, she said. We'll plan. In her room later, Mama wrote again in her notebook under things to do if God grants victory. Find a way to make this household strangers. She underlined hold 3 times. Outside, the blue gate gleamed like a quiet promise. And somewhere in the city's million windows, people who had never met her felt their own spines straighten a little, as if dignity could be borrowed like light. The morning after the second hearing, Surilir woke to headlines written in fire. Mother defies children in court, wins heart of Lagos. Mama Felicia's phone buzzed nonstop. Reporters, pastors, strangers, all wanted interviews. She ignored most, answering only calls that began with prayer. But one number she didn't know kept flashing. On the 5th ring she picked up. Madam Felicia Ocone. The voice was slow, dignified. This is Mr. Adams, retired from Standard Trust Bank. I once handled your husband's estate account. There's something he left in my keeping. Her heart paused. You mean a document? Yes, madam. Sealed, labeled open only if the house is threatened. Chief Ocone gave it to me before he passed. I think the time has come. She arranged to meet him at Dyke's office. When she entered, the old man rose shakily, hat pressed to his chest. He placed a brown envelope on the desk. He said you would know what to do. Dyke broke the seal. Inside lay a letter on yellowed paper and a trust document bearing Chief Ocon's unmistakable signature. The words carried his voice across decades. If our home ever becomes a battlefield, let it become instead a refuge. No child of mine shall profit from its sale. Let the house serve as shelter to women cast out or forgotten. Silence filled the room. Even the ceiling fan seemed to hold its breath. Tears welled in Felicia's eyes. He knew, she whispered. He knew I would need his hand from the grave. Dyke tapped the paper reverently. This is your sword and your shield. With this, they cannot touch a brick. That evening, she visited the empty lot behind the church, the land she and Chief had once planned for a community center. Weeds grew tall, humming with crickets. She knelt, pressing her palms into the soil. Ocon, she murmured, we'll build again. Not for us this time, but for all the women who slept in fear. A streak of lightning stitched the sky. Rain began, warm and insistent. It washed dust from her arms, and in that baptism of storm she felt courage settle like armor. By the time the last court date arrived, the story had become national theater. People climbed compound fences for a glimpse. Hawkers sold sachet water labeled Iron Mother. Inside the courtroom, cameras were banned, but journalists still scribbled like mad. The judge entered, stern and weary. We are here for resolution, not spectacle, he said, but even he couldn't hide curiosity. The children sat together, a portrait of regret painted in designer cloth. Ibube's ties strangled more than adorned. Chica's hands twisted a handkerchief. Nonso, thinner now, stared at the floor. Dyke rose. My lord, the defense presents final evidence. He handed over Chief Ocon's sealed trust letter. This document, verified by both the bank and the land registry, supersedes any later claim. It directs that the property be held in trust for charitable purpose, a shelter for widows and women in distress. The judge read aloud. Each word fell like judgment from heaven. The courtroom stilled. Chica's mouth opened. No sound emerged. Ibube's lawyer objected weakly. Forgery, my lord. The judge's gaze sliced through him. You accuse a dead man's signature? Sit down. Minutes later, the verdict rang clear. This court recognizes Mrs. Felicia Ocon as rightful custodian. The children's petition is hereby dismissed with prejudice. A wave of applause broke decorum. Even the bailiff couldn't suppress a smile. Dyke clasped Mama's hands. It's done. But Mama only whispered, justice is one thing. Healing is another. Outside, microphone flooded her path. Mama Felicia, how do you feel? She adjusted her gel. I feel that family should never be tried in public, but if mine must, let the verdict teach grace. That clip played on evening news loops across Nigeria. At home, she laid the judgment papers before her husband's portrait. We won, Ocon, she said softly. Now let's make it mean something. Victory did not taste sweet. It tasted necessary. For her children, it was poison. Ibube's firm collapsed within weeks. Clients fled. One partner muttered, your brand is cursed. Chica's husband filed for separation. Gossip followed her like a shadow. Nonso disappeared into silence, drifting between bars and regret. Mama Felicia noticed none of their calls. There were none to notice. She kept her hands busy planting new hibiscus, repairing gutters, restoring life to corners long neglected. People came daily with gifts, blessings, requests for selfies. But fame exhausted her. She longed not for applause, but for purpose. Dyke arrived one afternoon with architectural drawings. Remember that shelter you mentioned? We can use your husband's trust to fund it. The law will back you fully. Her eyes brightened. Yes, the Ocon Haven. A house for those who have none. News of the project spread like Hamatan fire. Volunteers arrived with shovels. Artisans offered free labor. Even the governor's wife sent a donation. When the foundation stone was laid, Mama stood before the crowd, microphone trembling slightly in her hand. I forgive my children, she said, but I will not let greed win the last word. This land will sing of hope. As applause thundered, somewhere far away Nonso watched on a cracked phone screen. His throat closed. The mother he had wronged was building something wholly out of his betrayal. He turned the volume down and whispered, "God, give me one more chance." One rainy evening, thunder stalking the sky, the gate rattled. When Mama opened it, Nonso stood soaked through, suitcase in hand, eyes hollow. "Mama, I have nowhere to go." She looked at him for a long time, then stepped aside. "Come in before the rain decides you're its property." He knelt on the living room rug. "Forgive me. I followed them because I was afraid to be poor again." She touched his wet hair, then learned wealth that fear can't steal. Over the next weeks, Nonso lived quietly in the compound, mending pipes, repainting walls, driving Mama to site meetings. He never asked for money. Each day he wrote apologies he couldn't yet say aloud. The workers at Haven came to respect him. He worked hardest, spoke least. One afternoon, Dyke visited the site and found Nonso supervising masons. "You could have been anything," Dyke said. "Now look at you." "I'm finally something," Nonso answered. "Useful." When the roof beams rose, Mama climbed the scaffolding herself, head wrapped tight, Nonso steadying her elbow. "You see, my son," she told him, "every brick here is forgiveness mold from dust." That night, over dinner, she handed him a folder. Inside was a job letter. Project Coordinator, Haven. Salary small but honest. He swallowed hard. "Why me?" "Because punishment changes nothing. Responsibility does." Outside, frogs croaked their amens. For the first time in months, the house slept without ghosts. By December, the building stood complete. Cream walls trimmed in turquoise, wide windows breathing light. A sign above the gate read the Haven, "Where hope sleeps safe." On opening day, drums echoed down the street. Women arrived in jailbride as sunrise, carrying trays of food. Church choirs sang. Journalists filmed. Even the mayor sent a wreath. Mama Felicia walked slowly through the new halls, fingertips brushing fresh paint. Rooms gleamed with bunks and donated bedding. The kitchen smelled of rice and new beginnings. She paused at the central courtyard where a small fountain burbled. "Ocon," she whispered, "look what we've done." When she cut the ribbon, the crowd roared. She raised a microphone, voice steady. "My children thought I fought for walls, but I fought for meaning. A house is not a legacy. Hearts are. May every woman who sleeps here remember that she is still somebody." Tears streaked faces. Even reporters forgot to write. Later, as evening softened the sky, Nonso led the first group of residents to their rooms. 3 widows, 2 young mothers, 1 teenage girl clutching a newborn. "You're safe now," he told them quietly. From the veranda, Mama watched him, pride and pain braided in her chest. "Is healing," she told Dyke, who stood beside her. "And you?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "I started healing the day I stopped fighting to own and started living to give." That night, she sat by the fountain under the moon. The compound buzzed with laughter, pots clanging, life reborn. She opened her notebook one last time and drew a line through her list. Fix the fence. Plant hibiscus. Make this household strangers. Beside it she wrote, "Done." The camera of memory panned upward, blue walls glowing under streetlights, the sign shining, a mother's silhouette seated in peace. And from some unseen corner, the whisper of Chief Ocon's voice floated through the night. "You kept the promise. Felicia, you turned inheritance into mercy." The midday sun draped gold over Surulere when a white Hilux pulled up outside Haven. A young reporter stepped out, camera slung across his shoulder, nerves dancing in his fingers. The world wanted a new interview, the mother who had beaten greed, the widow who had turned tragedy into hope. Inside, Mama Felicia sat at a favorite spot beneath a hibiscus bush, reading Psalms. Her glasses perched on her nose. The lines on her face seemed carved by both war and peace. "Are you ready, Mama?" Dyke asked. She smiled. "I've lived the questions. Let me give the answers." Minutes later, she sat before the lights. The reporter began softly. "Mama, the nation calls you the Iron Mother of Surulere. How does that feel?" "Names fade," she replied, voice calm as still water. "It's deeds that echo." He leaned forward. Would you ever forgive your children? She adjusted her jewel, eyes steady on the lens. Forgiveness is not a gift I give them. It's a peace I give myself. But forgiveness does not mean foolishness. My house now belongs to those who need it. The reporter blinked. So, none of your children will inherit. She shook her head gently. Inheritance without integrity is a curse. Let them build their own houses, with truth as foundation. The cameraman swallowed hard. Even the crew stood silent. By evening, the clip stormed the internet. Within 24 hours, it hit 5 million views. Quotes flooded timelines. Forgiveness isn't weakness. Inheritance means nothing without honor. She turned a home into hope. Celebrities reposted. Pastors preached her words. Talk shows debated her strength. And across Lagos, women whispered her name as prayer. Lord, give me Mama Felicia's heart. At dusk, she sat on her veranda watching the crowd of volunteers paint the shelter's sign brighter. A small boy waved from across the road. Mama, we love you, he shouted. She laughed, waving back. Love me by loving someone else, she called. Her phone buzzed again. A message from Chica. Just one line. You've made your point. Mama typed slowly. No, my daughter. I've made a place. She set the phone aside, heart both heavy and light. The seed had been planted. Soon the final harvest would come. Ebube's life unraveled with the precision of karma. His once booming consultancy shrank to an echo. Former friends crossed the street to avoid the cameras. The gate of his mansion became a monument to silence. One morning, the bank called in his loans. His Range Rover disappeared on a tow truck. Sitting alone on the marble floor, he stared at his reflection in the black TV screen. For the first time, he saw not a victim of bad PR, but a son who had tried to sell his mother's soul. The tears came quietly, without permission. Across town, Chica's world fared no better. Divorce papers arrived. Her husband's final line simple. I can't build a family on betrayal. Her boutique closed after clients boycotted. Even her friends grew scarce. Shame lived with her now, eating from her plate, sleeping in her bed. Meanwhile, Nonso worked tirelessly at the shelter, finding dignity in the rhythm of service. Hammer, nail, smile, repeat. But guilt still haunted him. Each night he prayed not just for his mother's peace, but for his siblings' redemption. Mama Felicia watched from afar. She heard rumors of Ebube's bankruptcy, of Chica's tears, but she didn't gloat. At dawn she whispered, break them if you must, Lord, but rebuild them better. Weeks later, a letter arrived, no return address, just from a son who was blind. Inside, Mama, pride raised me, greed drove me, truth broke me. If you ever open your gate again, I will crawl through it. Ebube, her hands trembled. She set the letter under her Bible. Not yet, she murmured. Let repentance ripen before I pluck it. Early one morning, Dyke entered the compound and found Mama seated at a desk signing papers. What's this? He asked. The end, she said. And the beginning. She slid the document across. It was a deed of permanent transfer, legally donating her Suilia house and all assets of the Ocone estate to the foundation. Irrevocable. No one can challenge it again. Dyke breathed. You're sure? Completely. Let the world see that love gives, not clings. That afternoon she held a press conference inside the shelter courtyard. Cameras crowded the gates. Volunteers wore T-shirts reading her last move. When she stepped to the microphone, the sun glinted off her silver earrings. Her voice carried through the city. Once, this house was a battlefield. Today, it is a blessing. I have given it fully to Ocone Haven so that no woman will ever sleep under rain while I have walls to spare. People ask why. Because keeping it for myself would mean I want to fight. Giving it away means a fight never needed to exist. My children fought me for this house, but they didn't know this house was never mine. It was purpose waiting for proof. She lifted her chin. This is my last move. The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed. Reporters wept openly. By evening, her speech trended worldwide under # her last move. Influencers posted reactions. Gospel choirs turned her words into songs. One caption read, she broke them not with revenge, but with grace. At home, Chica watched the broadcast, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Ibube saw it on a cracked phone in a friend's apartment. They both whispered the same line at the same moment. She won. But Mama didn't see it as victory. That night she sat alone on her veranda, hands folded. "Okon," she said softly, "we finished our assignment." A full year passed. Okon Haven thrived, its walls bright, its rooms alive with laughter and healing. Children played in the courtyard. Women learned tailoring and accounting. The shelter had become a miracle people could touch. One afternoon, while Mama watered her hibiscus, the gate creaked. Two figures stood there, Ibube and Chica, dressed simply, eyes swollen from miles of regret. They dropped to their knees before she could speak. "Mama," Chica whispered, "we are sorry." Ibube's voice cracked. "We fought you for bricks. You gave us back our souls." For a heartbeat, she only looked at them. Behind her, the shelter hummed with life, proof that forgiveness builds stronger than anger. She reached out both hands. "I am too old for hate. Come home." They wept into her lap like children again. Nonso came running from the courtyard, tears bright on his face. The four of them clung together, a family stitched by mercy. Later that day, Mama led them through the shelter. "See," she said softly, "this is your father's dream breathing. If you must own something, own this legacy." They helped serve dinner to the residents. Chica fed a toddler who wouldn't stop giggling. Ibube repaired a broken window latch. For the first time in years, peace didn't feel like defeat. As evening fell, the entire shelter gathered for prayer. Mama's voice rose above the chorus. "Lord, thank you for turning greed into grace and blood into blessing." The sun slipped down, gilding their faces with light. The camera of heaven must have smiled. Time moved gently after that. Seasons folded like pages. Mama Felicia grew frailer, but her eyes never dimmed. She spent her mornings at the shelter garden, reading stories to children born a rescue. One night she told Nonso, "When I'm gone, don't cry too long. Cry just enough to water the flowers." He laughed through tears. "Mama, stop talking like that." She smiled. Even the sun sets beautifully because it knows it must rise somewhere else. Weeks later, she paused in her sleep, Bible on her chest, window open, hibiscus blooming outside. Peace looked like her face. The funeral filled streets. Banners read Mama Felicia Okon, the mother who turned a house into heaven. Widows from across Lagos marched behind her coffin. Journalists broadcast live. Choirs sang the same song her children once mocked her for humming while sweeping the yard. At the graveside, Ibube spoke first, voice trembling. He said, "We fought her for a house. She built us a home." Chica followed, sobbing, "She showed us that love is louder than shame." Nonso closed with prayer, "Let her walls never grow cold." Months later, Okon Haven expanded. New dormitories, classrooms, gardens. A mural on its main wall showed a smiling woman in Jeel holding keys out to a crowd of women. Beneath it, painted in gold, she gave the world her home and broke greed with grace. Visitors still come from far away to touch that wall, whispering wishes and thanks. Children run through the courtyard shouting, "Mama Felicia forever." And on quiet nights, when the wind moves through hibiscus petals, some swear they hear her laughter, soft, motherly, endless. Because legends don't die, they move into the hearts they healed. And Mama Felicia's last move keeps playing forever, turning every wound into a doorway of light.